Mike,
Okay,
for my first podcast of the new footballing season, because I wanted you to be the first, I was looking for someone with a bit of wit, charm, talent, and inspiring. And I thought of you because I'd met you recently. Well, I've travelled to Glasgow. We're in Glasgow at the minute. City of Culture. You know the City of Culture, don't you?
Of course, yeah. Always been a city of culture, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. So you possess all the qualities. I thought, what better way to kick off the new season? I know you're a footballing fan, and we'll come to that. First of all, thanks for agreeing to have a chat. I believe you're signing copies, or you've been signing copies, because this will be after the event in Glasgow.
Yeah.
So where is it you're doing the gig?
Today I'm appearing at Asai Records on Sauchiehall Street, and I'm signing copies of the new album. It's coming out today, and so I haven't been able to play in Scotland on the tour dates that we've been doing, so I thought this is the next best thing. So even though it's a big day, I've got to get back to Wales tonight, because we're hosting our Snowdon Rocks weekender, so I'm climbing Mount Snowdon in the morning.
See, how hard is that, and how difficult is that?
It's going to be a tough one tomorrow, because it's we're going up the Watkin Path, which is the hardest trail up Snowdon.
Right.
So we've got a lot of people coming, and we raise money for our charity Love Hope Strength for the local cancer services, because I'm a leukemia survivor.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
And so we do, and later in the year we're going to the Alps, and I'm speaking at the Cancer Leader Summit in
so you do all that.
California.
Is there a lot of people go? Is it a group?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, this year we call it the Snowdon Rocks Weekender, and we tried to take it slightly off the mountain, because we've in the past we've gone up the main Llanberis Pass, which is the popular route up Snowdon,
right?
And we've taken over 1,000 people to the summit and done a gig on the top.
Oh, have you? Brilliant.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. But we thought environmentally we needed to sort of take it off the mountain. So before the pandemic, we started doing it we partnered with Zip World with all the zip lines. And we did a hike through the Nant Francon Pass, but we had bands like Slade playing and Miles and the Wonder stuff, and we had Billy from the Cult came and played, and we had the Cast come and play. So
brilliant, something totally off the wall.
We made it a little bit more intimate this year in a sort of secret location, which it's called the Gwynant Barns. It's like a wedding location. It's beautiful, and there's a big barn we can do a gig in tonight and tomorrow, and
certainly
people hanging out.
The adrenaline going.
It's all good fun, and we're trying to make it a sort of sexy cancer charity if we can. And because we're about living with the disease, not giving into it. Yeah. So it's almost that you have to accept it, but keep moving all the time, and don't let cancer take anything of your life away. A lot of people, when they hear their cancer word associated with themselves, they send themselves plummeting 200 floors below and start the recovery down in the basement of life. But we say to them, just rewind a bit, just remember where you were the night before you had cancer. You were probably out running, you may be watching football, you were hanging out with your wife or your kids, or go with your workmates. Well, start from there, take cancer with you on that journey from there, and see where you can
well, good luck with the walk.
Survive.
Talking about walks, I did Machu Picchu.
Yeah, I've been
have you
there,
done it?
Yeah, we did the
How
Inca
difficult
Trail.
was that?
That was a tough. Did you do the Inca Trail?
Yeah, you walked 40 yards and you bent over breathing.
Kiss a man on top of Dead Woman's Pass and all that stuff, and have a glass of whiskey.
Oh no, we didn't do that. I'm total away, man.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, what a great experience. But I tell you what, though, I don't know if you felt the same as me. When I got to Machu Picchu, I thought it's great, but it's not as old as Ridlon Castle where I live, and it's not as old as some of the Scottish.
No, that's right. It was just a breathing thing.
Yeah.
I'd watch Idiot Abroad, Cal Pilkington, the lad.
Oh yeah.
And he was saying, he was doing clips and went, you can buy oxygen in hotels and things. And I thought, what a load of rubbish. Every 40 yards you walk, you were struggling for air because of the altitude and that.
Well, in 2007, when we started our charity Love Hope Strength, it was, as well as going to Snowdon, we decided to go to Everest as well, and we took a load of like Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze and Slim Jim from the Stray Cats, and we went to we did at the time the highest concert on land. We did it on a peak called Kalapatar, which is about 1,000 feet above base camp, and it was a safe destination to get to, but there was obviously the question of altitude was challenging for everybody. And we decided, we got lucky. There was a company called Altitude in London who let us go into their chambers and be taken to the altitudes in a chamber.
Right.
So they take all the oxygen out and then see how you survived. And I was okay. I didn't respond to the altitude. I just kept going.
Well, they reckon it doesn't matter how fit.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So someone who's super fit can be affected by the altitude.
I've got mates at 30 stone. They could date, and maybe I would struggle.
We had Slim Jim from the Stray Cats coming. It was like taking the Fonz up the mountain. You know, I got off the plane and said to him, "Have you been doing any training?" He said, "Well, I walked the dog in California." You know, and then we go on the trek, and he's straight out of the box. He's got silver mountain boots, looks cool as anything. His mobile phone worked all up the mountain. We couldn't get any signal on ours. And we get to these campsites where we were for the night, and Slim was chatting as normal like the Fonz, you know.
Yeah.
Why can't we be like him?
Over the years, you did many gigs in Glasgow.
We the first time we came here, we played at the Bungalow Bar in Paisley when we were kids, and we had a band called 17.
Not heard of that.
That was like a legendary sort of gig in Glasgow at the time, in the late 70s really, and we played in there a couple of times, and then our first sort of proper gig when we became the Alarm. We played at Tiffany's on Sauchiehall Street, where
Tiffany's, I've heard of Tiffany's,
and we opened up for U2 in 1982, and it was their first night of what was going to become the War album.
Yeah, the War
Tour.
album. Yeah, I had that.
And we played it here with them. The first night they ever played New Year's Day and Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Right, they were great songs.
They played those songs, and it started a great relationship with the Glasgow fans, you know.
Do you like the Glasgow crowd then?
Yeah, brilliant. Because when we first came, when we played with U2 it was 1982, and we heard was "Here we go, here we go, here we go" before the gig, and we'd never heard that before.
Right.
And we never heard the audience become one.
Yeah.
Before your band came on, they were united in who they were.
Right.
And so you came on, and if you were brave enough to plug into that energy as a band, then you could have an incredible relationship with Scottish fans, which we have. And so we just launched into it, and we thought this was incredible. And it was almost like I don't think they were expecting like the Alarm at all. They would just get hyped up because they were going to see U2, and they hadn't seen them for a while. And then they got another band that and we just ripped it to bits. And I mean, the roof falling down, people were crammed on the balconies.
Right.
There was a balcony that ran round the edge, and my friend was up there watching. He said the balcony came down the ceiling while you were playing, you know.
Yeah.
So it
magical.
It was great, and then we played here as well with Stiff Little Fingers at the Apollo.
Right. Glasgow Apollo. That's long gone.
That was their last gig before they broke up.
Right.
In the original era of the band came to a close, and we played Newcastle City Hall, and then we came up here to Glasgow.
The Geordies are a wee bit like Glaswegians.
There's
and likability.
They're kind of almost Celtic, aren't they? But they're not.
Yeah, they are.
But they're close to it. You know, they're just across the border, aren't they? But I remember the gig being, it had that really high stage, and but it didn't seem to stop the Glaswegians from having a great time or connecting with the band.
Yeah.
And it was a great gig for us because it was like Jake Burns, who was a proper, he'd come from Northern Ireland. He had a massive connection with Scotland because of who he was and what he stood for. And so it was almost his way of saying, look, okay, we're coming to an end, but this is the band you've got to follow from now on. And it was that, again, started a great relationship with Scottish Glasgow fans for the Alarm ever since.
You ever wore a kilt?
I
you ever tossed a kilt?
I have wore a kilt because I've got an even more deeper Scottish connection. I sang for Big Country for a few years.
Big Country, of course.
Because I was big friends with Stuart Adamson.
Yeah, I like Big Country.
And I got to help them get back on their feet after Stuart's loss. And his passing. And so I did wear a kilt. How's this? When I was climbing Snowdon in Wales, and I got a phone call from Bruce Watson of Big Country, and he asked me if I'd help them do a couple of songs. He knew I was a big connection to the band, and I played their last ever gig, and we were good friends. And he said, look, we've been asked to do this event with Steve Lillywhite, the record producer. Would you come and sing a couple of songs for us? Because we haven't got Stuart anymore, obviously. And I said, yeah, of course, no problem. Without thinking. I never heard anything. And a month later, the phone goes again, it's Bruce. And I said, hey, Bruce, what happened to that gig? He goes, well, it didn't happen, but you were so enthusiastic that we've just booked the whole tour. And I went, what? And he goes, yeah. And I go, where's it started? He goes, Hogmanay in Glasgow. So I had to go and, stand and represent Stuart Adamson, who's as Scottish as they come, and beloved hero of Scottish music fans, and actually sing his songs in Glasgow on one of its biggest nights of the year on Hogmanay. And it was, I was absolutely shredding myself with nerves, but it was a fantastic occasion. I think everyone, when I sang for Big Country, Bruce's son came in to play guitar, because there's no way I could sing and play guitar like Stuart Adamson. He's a genius, was a genius, and still is. His renown is incredible. But it takes two people to fill his shoes, at least. Right. And so what happened was, when there would be four of us across the front line instead of three like Big Country. So we had two on the wide, and then there was no one in the centre, because I'd be on the inside left and Bruce would be on the inside right. And so the centre forward position, that was the fans' role. They took Stuart's role and they sang the songs back. Brilliant. So no one stood where he stood. And it was it was really cool. I read a poem.
The middle bits.
Yeah, I read a poem of the Porro Man, where Stuart got the inspiration for one of the songs from the Crossing, and it was my love letter to Stuart Adamson in a way, because he really helped the alarm out when we were, being challenged at certain points in our lives when. You get older and the lineup's not the same. Stuart didn't. He said, "Mike, if you believe that it's the right thing to do, come on tour with Big Country," and he was great like that. Brilliant, great man.
My first meeting with you was at Old Trafford for the Seville game, ended 2-2. You're a big Man United fan. You're Welsh, big Man United fan. Where did that come from?
Well, my granddad. You don't. It's the cliche, is that you don't choose your football team; it chooses you. And my granddad was. He was born in 1900. He fought in the First World War, and he was. He was after the war. He didn't want to come back to Europe. He'd seen all the devastation in the trenches, and he'd met these French-speaking Canadian soldiers in the trenches. So he went back to Canada with them, and he was looking for. He had some family in Chicago, and he was trying to get a job there. And he made it there eventually, but he didn't want to stay. He got homesick. In Wales, all Welsh people suffer from this thing called a hiraeth, which is a Welsh word that you can't translate, but it really, the closest you get to it is it's a longing for Wales. Right. And we're not. They always say the Irish are the Welsh that could swim, and they could get away from the Romans by swimming across the Irish Sea, whereas we stood back and fought. And the Welsh. And my granddad was like that. He was Welsh through and through, but the hiraeth got hold of him. But when he came back, he had to go and make a living in Britain, in England, and he ended up opening a fruit and veg shop in Blackpool, and then he ended up with a pub in Manchester. Right. So and it was there that he knew all the Blackpool 48 team. He knew all the Stan Mortensons.
Who was his boyhood hero? Do you know?
Stanley Matthews.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, okay. and he loved all that, and he knew those players from the 48 era, because they used to come into his fruit and veg shop and buy their oranges and apples, and then. He went to that final, Man United and Blackpool, and he left me the programme when Grandad passed away. He left me all his Man United programme, and he had programmes from everybody, because he liked football. So his passion was Man United. Yeah. But if United weren't playing, he'd go and watch City, or he'd go and watch Blackpool. Fan as well, but he'd go and watch everybody, but he brought me up to be Man United. He sat me down. He told me all the stories of Paddy Crerand and George Best and Bobby Charlton and Dennis Law and those guys came from all over, Ireland, Scotland, England,
British sales
and we had Jimmy Murphy was the assistant manager for and he was from Wales. He took us all the way to the
that was your hook to the United.
Yeah, so that was it. Yeah, despite my dad was an Arsenal fan, he was mortified. But my dad was from Ealing in London, but he was bombed out during the war. So him and his brother and sister were all evacuated to Wales. He met my mum, and then they settled in Wales, and then that had me.
On the night going back to Old Trafford, I remember former United kid. Was it Van der Gouw or Van der How? How do you pronounce his name? You're better.
Van der How, I think.
Van der How, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
He was in the box alongside Brian Robson-Pallister. And I remember Van der How asking you about your family, and you said, my two boys are here tonight in the Stretford end.
Yeah,
how proud are you? Your two sons?
Oh, yeah, I love them to bits. They're my best mates. Yeah. They're good good sportsman, good at football, golf.
Did you brainwash them for the United side?
I brought them into United, yeah. When they were born, both of them when they were born, as soon as they were like babes in arms, and I took them to United with my wife Jules. We've been season ticket holders since 1986, and our season tickets were right next to the bench, and at the time before Ten Hag switched them around, we were seats away from Alex Ferguson in all that era, you know. Wow. And so when Dylan, my youngest, was born,
it was nothing to do with Bob Dylan. You didn't even know.
It was because we toured with Bob Dylan, but Dylan Thomas was a bit of a hero of mine as well. Right. And when Jules and I met, we said if we ever have a son, we're going to name him Dylan, because Jules, my wife, was doing a dissertation in university on Dylan Thomas, right, and I was on tour with Bob Dylan, so we thought that's got to be the name of our son. Dylan. And when he was born, I sneaked him in my jacket to Old Trafford, and I think we were playing Sheffield United at the time, I think, somewhere, and Jules had to breastfeed him and Alex Ferguson looked over, bring him in, get him into the ring, gave us a thumbs up, you know. And then we did it with our youngest son, Evan. When he was born, he was brought into the. I had trouble getting him in. It's classic, isn't it? I had him in my jacket, and I went to the first turnstile where I normally show my ticket, and the guy was like, "You can't bring him in, he hasn't got a ticket." I said, "Come on, you know, he's only a..." No, sorry, I'll lose my job if I let you in with an extra person, you know, even if it's a baby. Went, okay, so went to the very next turnstile, walked in and went, "Get him in, let's get him part of the religion." You know? And I think he started crying when the goals were going in, when all the cheering was going up, but he was destined. I think he was crying then because he wanted to be in the Stretford end even then.
Did you ever meet Fergie?
I only met him once at an airport.
Oh, right,
yeah,
okay.
And he got to say thanks for all the amazing years. Yeah, he was a great manager, great man.
I was a great man manager. You know, I talked to obviously the lads, and they say coaching, he wasn't a great coach, great man manager.
Right, yeah.
Knew everybody's makeup, who needed a bit up the backside, who needed to stroke their ego.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid of.
No.
You know, I always thought with Ferguson, whenever I saw him, and you could see him in the stands, he was comfortable in his own skin. Yeah. He wasn't. He didn't feel like he didn't need to apologise for anything. No matter what, you know, he had the tough Glasgow upbringing. He'd been a landlord of a pub. Yeah. Great footballer. You know, maybe had.
No, he wasn't a great footballer. He played for Rangers. I'm Celtic, man.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was always a bit of an Aberdeen fan when I was a kid. Yeah. I had a friend who Phil Dobbs, and he'd come down. He had a connection to Aberdeen. Right. He was just an Aberdeen fan. And then we signed Martin Buchan from Aberdeen,
centre-back, and
I used to see him sit on the Stretford end. I used to get right down by the old picket fence, the red and white fence in Stretford end, and he was playing, and you know, they'd run like feet away from you, wouldn't they? You know, when there was action in the corner of that flag area. And I always remember he had these really cool Gola boots on. I always liked Gola boots because of Martin Buchan. So I had a soft spot for Aberdeen.
Aberdeen used to be a bogey team for the old firm.
Yeah, well, there was a big rivalry, wasn't it? Aberdeen,
there was
Scotland,
at that time,
you know, and Aberdeen and Scotland, and they were really the one team that stood up to Celtic and Rangers and challenged that. They had a period, especially when they had Alex Ferguson. Yeah. And so I was quite aware of Alex Ferguson before he came to United.
Yeah, because he won the Winners' Cup, didn't he, with Aberdeen?
I mean, what he did with Aberdeen is incredible, isn't it? So I was so glad that we got him to be the manager of United.
He wanted rid of him after a year as well, and then
they did. Yeah, I couldn't understand that. I was you know, I could see that he was putting things right, but I think his one mistake when he came, he thought, I've got these great players like Brian Robson and Norman Whiteside, but I don't think he realised the strength of the drinking culture at United at that time.
Yeah, that was well documented, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I don't think he was really in danger of getting the sack, because Martin Edwards really believed in him.
Well, I think he came to that final when they played Crystal Palace.
Yeah,
and they drew, and then he dropped Jim Leighton, the Scottish international
he did.
keeper.
Yeah, well, that's a big
That's
one.
How ruthless he was.
That's it. Yeah.
And that was a tight turn.
Well, that's why I think Ferguson was not afraid to do that stuff, because he's not afraid who he is. He's just being honest, isn't he?
Yeah.
So my honesty tells me, sorry, Jim, you're not playing today. Yeah. I've got to go with this, even though it's a dramatic call.
Yeah.
But he could probably sense that the team were not confident in the keeper. you know, the back
after
four
the
weren't
first game,
confident in him, and he could sense that, and he thought, right, we've got to change this.
Yeah, nothing to do with the Scottish thing. You're out, mate.
It's like the opposite of when Ronaldo was at United, and he had Roy Keane in front of him when he was a kid, and Roy was at it, probably feeling the frustration of his body not doing it what his mind wants to do. Yeah. And he was taking it. He was intimidating someone like Ronaldo. So they had the big bust up, and Fergie moved Roy on. Next minute, he's got a superstar footballer flourishes, and then the same thing happened to Ronaldo. He comes back to United. Yeah. He can't do what his mind wants to do, and he takes it out on all the other players as well. So it had to be moved on.
Who was your boyhood hero?
Well, it had to be George Best for me, you know, that was it, yeah.
I've heard some people saying, I worked with Malcolm McDonald, Supermac, played with Newcastle, England.
Arsenal,
Arsenal. And he says the best players he's ever seen. I'm saying better than Messi and Maradona. Yeah, he was the best.
Yeah. Well,
was he that?
I think, I'm not sure, because you can't, I don't think we got to see him at the highest levels.
Yeah.
You know, I know he won
the World Cup,
but it's a bit like him and Paul Gascoigne in a way. I think they threw it away, kind of thing, in a way, and that's why I can sort of don't have the same respect for Best that I maybe had when I was growing up and I see him play. Yeah, he was incredible, but I would have liked to have seen him stay fit, play till he was 32, and write a proper legacy. And I don't think Man United then knew how to handle a player like that. They just couldn't have it. Matt Busby and all the staff, they couldn't handle someone who was, you know, if he'd been around today in social media times, he'd have more followers than Man United. Like Ronaldo had more followers than Man United as a club. And it's hard to deal with, I think. And I think Best, you know, he could take it. He could take a kick in, couldn't he? And he'd get up and he'd go again.
And similarly, he was meant to be shy away from the football.
I'm sure he was. I think that's probably where the booze came in, just to empower him a little bit.
Yeah, sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really sad, you know, when you hear his story, and even as a kid, it's kind of tinged with sadness. He gets to Old Trafford, sneaks back home on the boat because he's homesick and all that.
Yeah, back to Ireland.
He needed a bit of care, a bit of an arm around him a bit more, and maybe.
I was going to say needed a woman.
Yeah,
he probably plenty then.
He probably did.
He probably needed a man.
He probably had too many, didn't he? But he was still, you know, I saw him score that chip against Tottenham when he chipped Pat Jennings.
There was some great goals.
And you know, still see him now jinking down that wing in the corner flag where I was watching him from.
Yeah.
And
great memories.
Yeah, brilliant. You know.
When you left school, you became a computer operator.
I did.
Is that an indication you were a clever lad?
Lucky, I think. I went to Real High School, and the teacher was quite adventurous. The maths teacher, and I was all right at maths. I don't know why.
At maths.
Yeah, well, I was hopeless at everything else. History and all that, I couldn't deal with all that. And so, basically, when I got to my O-level time, I got lucky that when I got to choose my exams, it was the first time you ever saw computer studies on the school curriculum, and that was a choice. And I thought, but it was only at a GCSE level. It wasn't an O-level. But I thought to myself, I'm going to do typing at school just in case I want to be a journalist, and I thought, there's lots of girls do typing as well, I'm going to do that. And I ended up doing typing, and that helped the computers because it was all about typing into this machine. And then after a year, I did well at computer studies because I enjoyed it. I didn't need to be taught. I just enjoyed
if you enjoy something, you're going to.
You know, I didn't like sitting down and having to learn things
by rote. You don't want to do.
But I sort of found the maths and typing and computers, I found them creative in me, and I did art as well. I was good at art.
Oh, were you
and
good
I did
at
all
art?
that, and I enjoyed all that. I didn't feel like I needed to learn that. I had it in me. I just needed to get it out.
Right.
And whereas when it was come to other subjects, I wasn't. But maths, biochemistry, and physics.
French, I could hardly talk English.
I couldn't even. You know, it's hopeless at all that. So, but the stuff that I found a kinship with, I didn't need. I felt like I was happy to turn up and do it.
Right.
And then after a year, the teacher said to me, "Look, you're in the top of the class at computers. Do you want to do? They're bringing the O level in now, and you could probably cram it in a year."
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah, okay, great." And I did. and I got an O level in computer studies, the first time it had ever been happened in Britain.
Wow!
And so then I could go to college. I went to Llandrillo College, not Kelston College. It was called Deeside University now, and I went there in the 70s and to do an A level in computers. And it shows you how the times have changed. I get there after booking into it, waiting all summer, turn up, go to class. I'm the only kid in the whole class. The only person who wants to learn about computers in Wales.
You become a wizard.
And I'm there, and after a month, the dean of the college comes over and says, Mike, we can't afford to run this course to teach one person, so you're going to have to go and do something else. I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? You know, and so at the same time, I said, well, I've just been reading the local paper, and there's a big supermarket chain who had their headquarters in Prestatyn, where we lived, in Rhyl, and it was QuickSave, and they were looking for a computer operator. And my mum,
what's the chances
so I applied for the job, and they couldn't believe that I'd got an exam in it, and they went, "You've got the job. No one else is going to come in with that, with a qualification." and I was away, and I loved working in computers, but I didn't like work. You know, I didn't you know, I got in after about 6 months of being in QuickSave, I got into the Sex Pistols. I saw them in 1976, and I used to go to this club in Manchester called the Pips, and they had a place called the Roxy Room, and I was going there when I was 15 and 16, and people would come down from Glasgow for it, and all the Bowie fans would be in there. So everyone was dressed like David Bowie or Siren eras, or Brian Ferry, Roxy Music, and doing the Brian Ferry thing, and there was
how did it go?
There was a couple of guys from Glasgow who used to come down and work in the market in Rhyl in the summer, and work on and do the markets, and they were the first people I'd ever met that had city vibe about them.
Right.
And one guy was called Graham Opdal, was his name. And he was as cool as you can imagine. He looked like Brian Ferry, and he'd come into the club and he did the Brian Ferry thing, and all the girls were around him, and I was like, wow, you know, I want to be him. and his other mate ended up was in the Blow Monkeys, became the sax
the Blow Monkeys. I remember them
in the Blow Monkeys, and so going to Pips, I'd see all the guys who had city vibe, you know, about them, that they were a bit more sussed out than us. Hicks from the Sticks, you know, from the Post. And so that was a big influence on me. And then when I saw the Sex Pistols, I took the plunge and started to dress a bit like them. And so I turned up to QuickSave in a tight-fitting suit with narrow trousers. Because at the time when I went to QuickSave, everyone had like big flare jackets and big flare platform boots on and kicker ties like this. And big moustache, sideburns, and long hair, and I'd shaved all my hair down and got a proper spiky top punk cut. And then the boss pulled me into the office and said, "You can't come into work looking like that." And I'm looking at him in his platforms and his flares, thinking, "You don't realise, but the world has shifted on its axis." And then he sent me home to put flares on and come back to work. I'm not doing that.
Imagine doing that now.
And they had to accept that they couldn't force me to do it, but I got downgraded, cut me pay, and it made me like a pariah in the office. And then about 3 months later, I come into the office and I'm stood there, and I can see this figure hiding around the columns in the offices, and it was my boss. And he'd realised that the world had changed, and he was coming in narrow trousers. Oh, God,
you're the role model.
I told you. Now give me my payback. but I probably should have. I left it. I got into bands through the scene, the Pistols, and all this music scene, and I thought that's what I've got to do.
So what about your first band? I read it was a Toilet.
Yeah, that was it.
Come on, Toilet. Where's that name come from?
We were in a pub. We were in the same pub the Alarm did its first ever gig. It's called the Victoria Hotel in Prestatyn by the railway station, and I've been trying to persuade these guys that I knew from another band. There was a band called Quasimodo.
Quasimodo is another great name.
Yeah, and the keyboard player was a guy called Carl Wallinger, who was in World Party and ended up in the Waterboys with Mike Scott. And they had another guy called Dave Sharp, who was from Manchester, who was a guitarist. And I used to go and watch them rehearse, and I was like, wow, they're amazing, you know. And I just about learnt a couple of chords by then. And I was trying to tell them about this thing called punk and new wave, and and this is probably still late 1976-ish, and it hadn't really caught on. And they let me come into rehearsal room, and the only thing I could sort of play was "Vicious" by Lou Reed.
Vicious,
And I couldn't really play it anyway. They laughed me out of the room, and I could. And anyway, that one of them, the bass player, went to London, and I was trying to persuade him that. And then when he'd seen this, he saw the Stranglers in London, and when he came home, I met him in the pub for a pint. And he said, "Mike, I get it, punk rock, the Stranglers, I've seen it." I said, "Right, come on, let's start a band." And he goes, and I was dying to go to the toilet, and I looked at him and went, "That's what we'll call ourselves, the Toilets," when I saw the sign. And then we started the band, and I thought I wrote my first songs for it, and our singer was a guy called O'Malley. It was Richard Jones. He was from Coleraine in Northern Ireland,
Coleraine.
And he'd been sent to Wales. His dad was Welsh speaking, and his mum was as Irish as can be. And they ended up moving back to North Wales because his dad was running for Plaid Cymru, for the Welsh political party.
Right.
And so Richard O'Malley, as we called him, he was brought to our school as a new kid, and the teacher made him sit next to me, and we became instant best friends, as you do, And then so I started this rehearsal with the bass player, and then I had another singer lined up who'd come from Holywell in North Wales, but as you did in those days, you made an arrangement to meet someone off a bus at 7 o'clock on a Friday, and you waited outside the bus, and if he never got off, that was it.
Oh, he never
got off the bus. So I went to our local club, the Bistro, and they played a Sex Pistols song, and I saw this guy pogoing in the middle of the dance floor. He was jumping up high, and I went, and it was O'Malley. I went, "Wow, didn't realise you were into it." And he goes, "Yeah, it's amazing." I said, "Do you want to be the singer in the band? We're rehearsing tomorrow." And he said, "Yeah."
And that was it.
So we went down. We did a few these songs I'd written, and I knew it was good. And then there was a club called Eric's in Liverpool on Matthew Street, where the Beatles started opposite the Cavern, and I went up there to get us a gig, and as the guy opened the club on a Saturday morning, it turned out it was this guy called Roger Eagle, who was, I didn't know it at the time, but he was a legendary Northern Soul guy, and he'd run the Twisted Wheel in Manchester, and he was now running a sort of punk club in Liverpool. And I said to him, "I hear you do these Saturday afternoon auditions, could we have a gig next Saturday?" And he goes, "Well, what are you called?" And I said, "We're called the Toilets." And he goes, "That's a shit name, isn't it?" And I thought, "Oh no." So he said, "If you change your name, you can have a gig." So yeah, okay, which started another long tradition of changing the names of bands. And then I said to him, and then he said, as I said it, he starts putting a poster that said, "Next week, secret gig, The Clash." And I went, "Oh my God!" I bought the ticket number 1, which I've still got.
Right.
And he said, "Come back next Saturday and you can have an audition." So we went to play, and we ripped into our set. On a Saturday afternoon, we were supporting a band called the Shattered Dolls. And we finished, and it was like the whole place, the atmosphere around us changed. Bob Geldof was watching us, because he'd played there the night before with the Boomtown Rat. He jumped on the stage, goes, shook my hand. Next minute, the DJ jumps off, Chris Harrop, and he wanted to be our manager. Roger Eagle comes on the stage. "Do you want to play with the Clash tonight?"
Wow.
Okay, now I said, "Say it again." And we played with the Clash, and that was it. And we went to London, and I think, I know we were a really good band, but we didn't have anyone to help us really. We were just we didn't have a Svengali like the Pistols had Malcolm McLaren, or the Clash had Bernie Wrote, the Beatles had Brian Epstein. We didn't have that guy. We were just 4 kids, and we didn't realise how good we were. And then we went to London to go and play at the Roxy and all that stuff. And then we were having our first pint in a pub in London. And next minute I'm going, "Where's O'Malley, the singer?" He was climbing up the walls. He got into the speed and the cocaine.
Oh, right.
And to be honest, he never came down. And he died eventually. But that was his introduction to drugs, and he kept going. And he was brilliant. I often think if he'd stayed clean, he was always the life and soul of Real. He was destined to be a superstar. I think somehow, if he could have stayed right, he could have been our Bono, you know. He was that.
Yeah.
When he went on stage with the Clash, he had the audience in the palm of his hand from the moment he walked on stage. He had something.
You need a presence, don't you? That,
yeah.
You know that as a friend.
And I had to learn how to do that, but he had it right from. Didn't even know what he had. It was that fresh and that exciting and raw what he had. Yeah. And I always used to see him, and he was a big Man United fan like me and all that, but he was always a coping addict, if you like, and he died way too young. A big loss, but that was the sort of start of our journey, really.
The Alarm came to the fore in 81. Initially it was going to be double-barrelled name, Alarm.
Yeah.
Is it true that John Peel had a wee sort of go at Duran?
He made a joke. Story. We'd written to him about doing our first gig, and we were going to be called Alarm, and he was playing. He played our record that we'd made as a band called 17, and he said, "Oh, this band 17, I played their single Bank Holiday Weekend. They're changing the name to Alarm for this gig," and he said, "There's a few of these bands now. There's Duran, Talk."
That was him.
And he goes, "I'm thinking of changing my name to John Peel." And I said to the lads, "We're called the Alarm from now on." And I knew we'd never live it down. So he kind of gave us our name, and that, like I say, we moved to London. We made our own single, and I knew we had to move out of the small town. There was not enough people around us, or enough of a vibrant scene to let our energies grow. It's like anything else. If it doesn't grow, it turns on you. Then energy needs to feed itself. And we had to move away and find a place for our energy to expand. And we moved to London. We pretty quickly we ended up playing with U2 in December 1981.
Did you?